Hey you guys, welcome back. So I wanted to talk to y'all about the most important lesson that Hekate has taught me along my journey. If you're not familiar with Hekate, she is from the Greek mythology pantheon. She is the goddess of witchcraft, sorcery. She's also associated with the moon. She's basically one of the most deepest, misunderstood, powerful, amazing divine feminine energies that I've ever encountered. And I'm not I don't worship any spirit or deity. I do believe in God. I worship God, but I don't get super caught up in the labels. You know, these are just archetypes at the end of the day. But it's Hecate energy. It's a very specific and very vast, but very deep, intricate part of the divine feminine. There's many faces of the divine feminine. There's many faces and aspects of Hecate. But the most important lesson that she has taught me, it was not how to do a certain type of spell or what herb is the most powerful or when to do spell work during the moon cycle, none of that. That you would think, right? You would think her being a goddess of magic, that's her niche, right? Her game plan. No. The most important lesson that Hecate has ever taught me is this. Magic begins and ends with your inner world. Inner work is the most important work you will ever do. It is more important than any job you'll ever have. It is more important than anything. Because if you do it correctly and in a way that's in alignment with you and your path and God, it's literally the healing and evolution and repair of your soul. So that energy and that wisdom is going to carry with you lifetime after lifetime. And it's not the only spiritual work to do, because as I explained in January, the way that I see things and the way that I was taught is when it comes to spiritual work, there is the spell work component, the ceremonies, the ritual, all that kind of stuff. And that's important. But there's also inner work and spiritual evolution and communicating with God, communicating with your spirit team. And throughout life, you'll need them both and you'll need them for different things. But witchcraft can only go so far if your inner world isn't in alignment with it. And sometimes, a beautiful thing that I've seen is I would do a spell trying, wanting to manifest something, trying to bring something to fruition, and I would start noticing shifts within me, within my emotions, my thought process, my behaviors, my routine, stuff like that, and also little tiny experiences around me would change. Certain spiritual teachers would come into my path that I would really resonate with. Or I would just be watching a random YouTube video and the message that I needed would be in there. Like synchronicity on the deepest level, right? That's how that spell would start working, and usually very quickly. And so it's like little by little that spell was unfolding, but it all started with me and my mindset, my thoughts, and my choices. Okay? So if you're doing spell work and you feel like, oh my God, it's not working, that might not be true. It might just be working on the inside first. And if you want results that last, that's what matters. And something else that I started doing when I would do a spell, a jabal, whether I was just doing it by myself or with a certain spirit, is I would put my intention in there and say, like, whatever I'm trying to manifest, please help me to gracefully and peacefully, you have to be specific, evolve into the type of woman that can have this certain type of thing. So that I can hold the blessing, You know, if you're trying to do a money spell to manifest 10 bands, you also want to evolve into the type of woman that can take that 10 grand and multiply it. Yeah, I'm not saying don't spend it, but, you know, spend a little bit on yourself, treat yourself, but take a little portion of it and find some way to multiply it and hold it. Don't just piss it away. Because then, what, you'll run out of money, and then you'll have to do another money spell, and so on and so forth. And this is why in my courses that teach witchcraft, spiritual work, spiritual techniques and stuff, I always include inner work. Journal prompts, you know, meditations and things like that, depending on what the course needs. Because I know the shift that it can make. And also, on the flip side of things, we talked about blessings. Now let's talk about curses and why healing is so important during spiritual warfare. If someone's trying to curse you, especially if it's someone that knew you very well and they know your vulnerabilities and they think that they know your weaknesses and your trauma, those are the pain points that they're going to try to target. Okay? They're going to try to use your struggles, which we all have, against you. They'll also try to use your desires against you. Okay? But if your inner world doesn't match that frequency of that curse that they're trying to do to you, it's not going to land. And it takes time to evolve to that point. I'm not saying that I'm invincible by any means, but I will say that the more inner work that I did when I was under attack, the easier it got, little by little. And I wasn't so vulnerable. So, blessings and curses both can only go so far. Until your inner work has to match. If they're trying to get you to self-sabotage and you're not a self-sabotaging person anymore for the most part, we all have our imperfect moments. But if you've kind of grown out of that, they're going to be pissed off. So both inner work and ritual work matter if that's your path. Everyone can do inner work, but if witchcraft is part of your path, then just know, like, inner work is a game changer. Okay? And I'm not, if y'all haven't noticed, I'm not one of these spiritualists that advertises miracles and quick fixes and quantum leaps and all this stuff, trying to market it that way. I'm not saying I don't believe in that stuff, but 90% of the time, it takes time. It takes time for spells to manifest. It takes time for you to do your inner work and move through things. Okay? So just hang in there. If you feel like your spell work isn't working, check out my courses. I have an evil eye course that goes super in depth, not only on the evil eye, but also cleansing, protection, return to sender, uncrossing work, road opening work to open up your path again so blessings can come. Did I say blockbusting already? I don't know. Getting the obstacles out of your path. It's super, super in-depth. And that course can be applied whether you're dealing with evil eye or actual spiritual warfare and psychic attack. All those techniques can be used for both. I also have a Gitana Glimmer Magic course. And it teaches glimmer magic, but from the perspective of for the Divine Feminine on a soul and energetic level. It's using beauty to replenish your soul and self-love. Because I believe and I know that self-love is the ultimate glimmer magic. It's not just about looking prettier. Okay, it's transformation that works. Because if y'all invest in these courses, I want to be able to give you knowledge and teaching that you can use for the rest of your life. And spell work is a big part of that, but it goes deeper. Okay? Those are the two courses I have published. You can check them out at sirensnectar.com/courses. And I'm also working on my destiny swapping course that will be coming in July. But I have a new, very unexpected offering for y'all. Not just inspired by Hekate, but actually channeled by me. Hekate, speaking through me, using me as a vessel. Let me tell y'all what happened. So yesterday, I sat down to record a regular podcast episode, had some inspiration, had an idea, and Hekate had a different plan. That episode turned into a whole transformation. A whole, energetic purge and calling out of the divine feminine and what we're up against, what we've gone through, and ultimately the shifts that we need to make. And it got really deep. It got really raw, very passionate. I got very vulnerable. And next thing I knew, that thing is an hour and 44 minutes long. Literally the most powerful and intense and transformative episode I've ever done. And after reviewing it and kind of sitting with my spirits, my intuition, I'm like, I love this. I am so proud of this. But it's too raw for YouTube and the public eye. It's too sacred. It's too deep, you know? So I turned it into a masterclass. It's called the Divine Feminine Masterclass, about the fed up feminine and the end of playing small. And it gets super in depth. I talk about a lot of different issues that the feminine has faced and is still facing, both spiritually, energetically, financially, physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff. Because we have a lot of resistance, y'all. But it's been building up for millennia. The feminine has been oppressed for millennia. And while your unique path and your story is very special and unique to you, a lot of the pain and trauma that you carry and the circumstances that you've dealt with or your ancestors dealt with is part of the feminine collective. And I made this episode with the intention of one thing, but it got so much deeper, and I realized by the end of it that those messages in this masterclass have the potential to save a woman's life. Okay? Whether she's just very depressed and dealing with emotional turmoil, or she's putting up with a very stressful and abusive situation, which we all know stress and emotional turmoil can and does lead to disease and illness, which can lead to you being unalived. We also talk about abusive relationships, all that kind of stuff. And it's very, very, very powerful. Too powerful for the public eye. Okay? And I was the vessel, but Hekate is the one that she was driving for that hour and 44 minutes because she's tired. The divine feminine is tired. She's fed up. The goddesses, I would like to think that if the goddesses and the divine mother had their way, they would this is so woo-woo and would never happen anytime soon, but the divine feminine, basically she's so tired of women suffering and also feminine animals and plants and the earth as a whole. She's so tired of it. She wants to send a giant UFO and just take all the women, just take all the femininity off this planet and just leave the men to themselves. But that's not feasible. Because in the universe we need masculine and feminine. So the feminine has to be here. Some of our souls are assigned here. We have to come here. We might as well make the best of it, right? But the divine feminine is tired of us suffering. And I firmly believe that the feminine, energetically, being so fed up, not just human women, but the deities, the higher ups, the nature spirits and all that, I think that's why we've had such an uptick in natural disasters. Hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, avalanches, earthquakes, all that kind of stuff. Because out of survival, the feminine has had to bury her pain so deep. And that goes into the earth, the core of the earth, and that energy has to come out. And we can shift things, but it starts with you. Okay? So if you feel like this is what you need, I promise you it is. Go to sirensnectar.com/masterclass to get yours. Afterpay is available at checkout, and you will receive the transmission within 48 hours via email, and it's yours forever. Okay? So I will put all the links in the description, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.